Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us again on the 1950s Fun Chat. Sister there, we are approaching number 100. This is number 99 today. So can you imagine that? 100 of these wonderful conversations with folks who either lived during the 1950s or whose lives have been influenced by someone who did live during the 1950s. And I think it's pretty much that if you didn't live then, you were probably influenced by someone. Would you think that, Jackie?
Exactly. And that's almost enough material for another book, but we won't go there.
Yes.
Okay. So speaking of books, guests and not guests and friends and anyone who's watching this, look at the bottom where you see that purple banner. It says www.whilethewindmillwatch.com. So While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s happens to be the title of our latest and first book. You may go there and find out information about the vendors that we have, the events, something about Janine and me, something about the book, and then, of course, all of the previous 1950s fun chats. Also, take a look up in that corner. Can you see that book up there, Janine?
Yeah, I can. It's got a little white dot in the lower right-hand corner.
It does, yes. And that little white dot is kind of an important little thing. The book was published in 2021. In 2022, the book won the National Independent Press Award in the regional category as a distinguished favorite in the nonfiction area. So I think probably we'll just begin. That's enough of that. Okay.
Let's introduce our guest.
This program emphasizes two criteria: guests who were born in the 1950s or guests who were influenced by the 1950s. So today's guest is in the latter category. This is Sherry Olsen. She's originally from Stet, Missouri. Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yes,
Sherry?
it is.
Thank you. Okay. Her family continues to farm and raise commercial cattle as well as purebred shorthorn cattle. She's the oldest of four in the family. In 1982, Sherry earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in Animal Science from the University of Missouri, Columbia, where she was a member of the livestock judging team, as well as the Block and Bridle and Independent Aggies. And in 2002, she enrolled into the graduate program in the Department of Animal Science at Iowa State University, and subsequently earned a master's degree and a PhD in meat science. In 2008, she began her teaching career in the department, where she serves as associate teaching professor, teaching livestock production, meat science courses, coaches and coordinates the intercollegiate meat judging program, and advises and mentors in undergraduate studies. So Sherry has been.
She's busy.
Pardon me?
I think she's busy. She's busy.
Just a little busy.
Yeah. Okay. So she's been involved in agriculture industry all her life.
Yeah.
She and her husband Roger have been married for 36 years, and they own and operate this business. It's called RSO Livestock, and now this is near Story City, Iowa, where they currently raise an 80-head flock of weather type Hampshire Cross and purebred Dorset ewes. So Sherry, we welcome you to the 1950s Fun Chat.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Well, and it'll be fun. Janine has assured me this is going to be a lot of fun. So Janine, my faith is in you. Okay. Okay.
So let's begin with something that it's a term that others may not know about. Please explain to the viewers the term weather type.
Well, weather type sheep. So we look at these weather type sheep as probably opposed to frame type sheep. Frame type sheep, probably for your general audience, have a lot more leg underneath them, and probably not quite as heavily muscle as what your weather type sheep are. So that is where our genetics are used to put more muscle on frame. They're not small sheep. They're not small sheep. They're more moderately framed, ready to go to market at about 130, 135 pounds. And you really get a lot of meat off the carcasses. And so that's what we do. Our genetics are raising the rams for other people to purchase. And also then you have their sisters, the wether type ewes that are marketed to people who are looking to improve their flock genetically, doing the same thing we're doing, really. And we do, although our business is rams and our placement ewes, we do sell some 4-H and FFA projects. We're fortunate in the fact we have a great nephew who has shown a great interest in showing lambs in 4-H, and that's been a lot of fun. And so that's kind of where we're at. We also have a strong interest in purebred cattle industry. We both, Roger and I, come from the purebred cattle industry, and we still maintain a strong interest in that. And hopefully one of these days we'll start putting together a group of purebred cows again.
Okay.
You know,
Yes.
Sherry,
Go ahead.
one of the things that I remember you having told me that for fun, you and Roger will go to auctions on Saturdays.
Oh, I'm a sale junkie. I swear, if they would pull together 2 yearling heifers in the middle of Story City for some guy to stand and say which one was the best, I'd be getting in the pickup and going. I wouldn't want to miss it. But yeah, I often laughed, you know, usually it's in the wintertime before we start lambing. And I used to say that Mike Sorensen with Livestock Plus was going to start kicking us out of sales because all we did was come and drink coffee and eat fudge brownies and sit and watch sales. But yeah, we do. And, you know, those are our people. You know, that's the atmosphere we were brought up with. I'm 63, Roger is 64. So a lot of the people that we grew up with are doing that, and it's just so much fun. Shows and sales, and of course now with our age, well, Jenny is an example, our niece Jenny Studer, so she has Brock who will be 12, and so getting to see every summer how those little kids grow and how much they change. I was just telling Jenny last week that Brock has gotten taller and his jeans are starting to get shorter. And that's just fun to see. So those are our people. And that's a lot of fun.
Yes. And consequently, as he gets taller, he kind of has to change his showing style with the lamb. Would that be right?
Yes, he does. You know, he came into that. Jenny always showed for us. You know that. And so then when Brock came around, we just never said anything because, you know, those kids need to take ownership. They need to really enjoy doing it because, you know, it's a lot of work. And it was not this February, but the February before last year, he reached out to Uncle Roger after Iowa Beef Expo and said, would you help me show some lambs? And Roger was like, well, Brock, yes, we will, if that's what you want to do. And he just enjoys it so much. But a lot of it is because, and he's shown cattle ever since he was a toddler, you know, big enough to lead around a feeder calf. But this is something that he can go down to the barn and he can do on his own. And he has total management of it. And it's his. You know, it's not anybody else's, it's his project. And so they are getting ready for county fair at Union County in Afton, which is on Monday. And Roger sat here at the coffee table last night talking to Jenny because she was waiting on cinnamon rolls to rise. So we've all been down that road. So it's a lot of fun. And county fair season is kind of starting to wrap up. I'm looking at the calendar right now, and here within the next 2 weeks, county fair season in Iowa will be wrapping up, and everybody will get geared up for state fair.
Okay.
So let's get back to the 50s, Jackie. What do you have something you could ask Sherry?
What I'm going to ask her is that how being influenced by the 50s by someone or some people or some job or something, how did that influence you to be the teacher that you are today? How did the 50s?
Oh, well, I tell you, Janine has heard me say this before. I use a lot of my faith in the classroom. And although I have to be very careful about doing that, obviously, because I'm at a land grant university now, But I was raised by teachers. My dad, although he did not teach, he was a great teacher, a great leader, and a mentor to me and my sister and my brothers, my mother as well. I can remember that reading was a very big part of what we did. I mean, the Ray County Library in Richmond, Missouri, which was our county seat, they had the bookmobile. And so every week, the bookmobile would come out to Millville or Stet, and they would bring a selection of books. And so Mother would throw us in the cab of the truck, and we'd go down to Millville, and we would check out books, and we could keep them for 2 weeks. And then they would come back, and we would return books and check out more. On the paternal side, my grandma Mary June was a teacher. And she, in fact, my dad, who was the oldest of 6 children, broke his back when he was in high school. And my grandma had kept up all of her certifications so that he graduated on time. So, but I was surrounded by great teachers and great mentors and great leaders, and I had really good educators at Stet. There were only 13 in my high school graduating class. And I will tell you right now, if it wasn't for Mary Jane Saltzgaber teaching me Algebra 2 and trigonometry at Stet, my boat would have been sunk at the University of Missouri. Because as I tell, and subsequently, one of the labs that I teach on Wednesdays, the first half of the semester, we calculate value of live market animals and carcasses. And the first half of the semester, I feel like I do nothing but teach math. But yeah, so in answer to your question, where I grew up, even going back and thinking about May Kaufman and Liella Pulliam and Bible school for a week in July, they had that knack. And I still remember all those lessons that they taught. So I had a very blessed youth growing up. None of us were millionaires, but we were all in the same boat, and it was just a wonderful life. It really was a wonderful life.
Yep. Plus, Sherry, what I know of you as an adult too, that you just both you and Roger just have hearts for young people, and yes, guiding them in the right direction.
Right, and it. You say that, Janine. I had a young lady from Northwest Iowa. She was one of my advisees. And we worked all last semester interviewing, putting in applications, and she'd say, Sherry, I've applied. And okay, I'm ready to get that phone call, to give you your recommendation. And on Sunday, I got a text from her, and she has accepted a job with the South Dakota Pork Producers Association as their person for marketing and communication. Tuesday night, I got home. I had a box waiting for me with a wonderful thank you card. And, especially in today's society, these kids, they need mentors, and they need somebody that is going to shoot straight and is going to tell them the way it is, but always remind them that they're loved. And therefore, I love all my kids. Roger and I don't have any children, but we've got a million kids. We'll be out in the yard doing something, and somebody will drive by and honk. Roger say, who was that? I said, I have no idea. Some kid, So yeah, and it's very important. And I was guided a lot I am still guided a lot by my faith, and, learning how that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And it's very, very important to listen. And I know in my role as an advisor at Iowa State University, and I typically will have about 60 young men and women. And when they come in, I remind myself, I just need to keep my mouth shut and I need to listen, because maybe the issue that they're having at that time is really not the issue. And if I listen, it's something a little bit deeper than that. And, you know, we talk about mental health issues, and I know I can pick up Successful Farming behind me, and there'll be an article about mental health issues. And especially since we have been through all of that COVID era and all of that, that really changed some kids when they had to go to online learning, when they had to do nothing but sit at a kitchen table or in their bedroom. And the only interaction they had was with somebody online because mom and dad were gone all day. And I know that at the university, you know, there have been some times that I have personally walked a student or two down there because I'm not trained. I'm not trained in that type of work, but also letting them know that it is, you know, mental health issues are nothing to be ashamed about. You know, obviously, if I went outside right now and cut my finger with my knife, what would I do? I'd go to Ames and they put some stitches in it because I needed to get it healed. And so working with these kids, using my faith, listening a lot, and then knowing the resources that we can get for them is very, very important.
Sherry, do you think in that 1950s, 1960s era, that generation of folks, or when we were all kids, do you think there was as much of a concern about mental health then, or was it unknown, or was it just put it under the rug?
Janine, I think it was put under the rug. I really do. Because when you work in well, you all know small town gossip, you know, and you hear things. And there were things, I'm sure, in every small community, things were going on, especially when you're thinking, well, think about the farm crisis. Yes. And think about all those families. You know, I read an article, and I like to read, you know, thank God for Billy, Don, and Carolyn Sue, because I really enjoy reading and I try to keep up. And so there was a story, and the focus was on these young people, obviously, you know, 25 to 30 years old, who are taking over the reins of these family farms. And these family farms have been in the family for generations. And how really that's a big deal, you know, because it is up to them, because they don't want to be known as the ones who let the family farm go. And when we're looking at, you know, the economy that we're in right now, you know, that's a big stressor. Going back to your point, yeah, I would say there probably was, but we just didn't talk about it. It was just kind of hush hush. The women at the extension club meeting every first Thursday, they would say, well, did you hear about Willa May? No, what's going on with Willa May? Or any number of things. I think, though, the one thing that I've been reading, you know, men and young men, you know, they think they got to be tough, you know. No, you don't have to be tough. What's going on? They need to talk. And even if it's, I know at church in Emmanuel Lutheran in Story City, there has been a strong focus on small group. And I'm sure that within each small group within the church community, those folks get together because they're like-minded and they can share and they can talk. And especially, you know, with, like I said, the economy that's going on right now. And men don't have to be so tough, because many times they're the leader of the household, but it's like Olsen and I are 50-50 in this marriage. I mean, it's give and take, So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question or not.
I think you did.
Okay.
Well, this goes back to your early childhood and even through your childhood. Your Sunday dinners, your family Sunday dinners. Those, when I've heard you talk about them, that was a unique time in our country when the compatibility of the family, especially on a Sunday dinner, was held. And can you tell us about that?
Well, very fortunate. As you well know, I can't cook a lick. My mother and Grandma Sarah and Grandma Mary June were excellent cooks. In 4-H, Mother grew up through the 4-H program, and clothing projects and food projects were two of the things. So Mother would, put on a big roast, and our life at a Sunday dinner at Mima's, if we didn't have Velveeta cheese, the world was going to come off its axis, because Velveeta cheese went on cauliflower, it was macaroni and cheese. But anyway, no, we would all gather up, and we would, Mother would get stuff started, and we'd go to Sunday school and church and come back home and get it all out on the table and sit and visit and kind of catch up with what everybody was doing. And then, of course, when all the grandbabies started coming in, they were dragging out all the toys in the middle of the living room, and nobody cared, Mm-hmm. And so we would all sit and eat and visit. And, Daddy passed away in 99. And Mother continued to do that every Sunday for some time after that. And then it just got to the point, it was hard, because Mother just turned 83 on January the 18th. And so, but those were very special times, because then what would happen, we would all then go on our way on Sunday afternoon. And then about time to eat supper, we'd all show back up at Mom and Dad's. And we would clean it, and Mother was like, y'all clean this up, because I don't want to look at it the rest of the week. But yeah, those were very special times. Very, very special times. And no, there's not a lot of that goes on anymore. But Grandma and Grandpa really become anybody who was having to batch it for the weekend. They would come, somebody, Alan Dreves would pull in, and we might as well come in and eat. We just sat down. So anyway, but yeah, that was pretty cool deal that went on, that Mom did.
Cool.
And it was the best meal of the week, I might add. It was the best meal of the week.
So now we've established that all through your life you've been pretty busy. So what do you do if and when you do have downtime?
Well, we don't have a lot of downtime around here. Between school and work, we've talked about, we really enjoy shows and sales. About, I can't even tell you, Jackie, it's been some time now. Roger judged the Buffalo County Fair out at, where were we at? Kearney, Lexington, Nebraska. But anyway, when I got out of school and went to work for the American Shorthorn Association, at that time we were in Omaha, 8288 Haskell Street, Omaha, Nebraska. And, that was back in the era of Dr. Tom Osborne. So if you weren't a Husker fan, you quickly decided that you better like him, or you were going to be the outcast.
That's right.
So, and I'm still a Husker fan. So anyway, I had always wanted to go up into the Flint Hills. And so for that time, Roger got done judging, and we just hopped in the truck and we drove over and went up along the west side of Lake McConaughey up to Shadron. And then we drove across Highway 20. And oh man, that was so cool. just so cool. Going through Cherry County, Nebraska, which has the highest number of cattle in the United States. I can remember on Highway 20 there was a mailbox and a headquarters sign. And we got home and Roger pulled it up on Google. And it's like their driveway was 6 miles long. And I thought, how cool would it be to live like that? So those are the kind of vacations. A funny story, one time years ago, Roger was supposed to judge at Kirksville, Missouri. And we did. And then it was like on a Sunday, he was supposed to judge over the river in Illinois. So we had thought that we would just overnight in Hannibal, Missouri, and do the Mark Twain experience. And we lasted for 3 hours and said, we're not going in any cave and we don't need to go down a riverboat. So we ended up hopping in the truck and going on over and just driving around and looking at livestock. And, you know, as you can tell, the picture on the wall, our lives revolve around livestock and agriculture. You know, this is the furthest here at Story City. This is the furthest I've ever lived from the Missouri River because I was in Omaha and Nebraska City, Columbia, Ray County, Missouri, my home county, the southernmost border, that was the Missouri River. And, you know, it's been, 93 to 20 years ago. Is that right? When we had the Great Flood. And the southernmost border of Ray County, Missouri, the Missouri River was 12 miles wide. And on mom's side, Ronnie still farms a lot of ground down in that Missouri River bottom. And that was just unreal. The river was 12 miles wide. The river made divots because it got to whirling so much. I heard Daddy say one time how many loads of rock it took to fill those holes. And sand, I can remember Strider Farms, the sand that piled up and just, it was terrible. It was so tall. Sure. And so they actually had to find rippers, and they were ripping up that ground once they could get back in the field and trying to incorporate that sand. So then it was years after that, as you were coming south Highway 13 and coming down into the bottom, in the summertime, you could look out across there and you could see the changes in the color of the corn and the beans, and where it fired up and was lighter in color. That's where some of the sand had not quite incorporated in as much into the ground as other places. But a funny story about that, I was working at the Farm Service Agency office in Richmond at the time. And of course, with the FSA, we had the disaster program that we had to implement. But the story was, there was a gal in Richmond who was pregnant, and her baby doctor was in Lexington, which is Lafayette County. And she refused to go to Kansas City to a baby doctor. So they actually put her in the boat and motored her across the Missouri River so she could go to her baby doctor. But, just stuff like that. And we sit and we laugh about it now, but for her, it was a big deal. Dennis Estes, who we always called he always worked for a John Deere dealership, and he worked in Richmond. And he could not cross the river, so he had to go up to Kansas City and get on I-70 and come back down and go to his job in Higginsville. And so he just slept in a cot in the back 5 days a week, and then he would get in the truck and go home and see Patty and the kids. But those levees were just breaking. We helped how did that go? Had a coworker who needed to move out of her house. There was another gal that we just came upon and trying to move. The levee was getting ready to break. That's what it was. The levee was getting ready to break. And, y'all have heard the joke about God finally told the guy, listen, I've sent 3 helicopters to get you off of the house. It was kind of like that. He just didn't think it was ever going to break. And I don't even remember how we were down there. I think Ronnie, my uncle, set us down there. He hadn't moved a thing. So Mother was packing up this woman's stuff in whatever she could find. And I was running a steep set of steps, running it upstairs to the second. That woman probably wasn't able to find anything because we were just and taking it upstairs. And then he ended up having to move out because the levee ended up breaking. There were people who would take turns running pumps to get water pumped out, and the community stepped forward. Guys who had no farming interests down there in that bottom ground at all, but they would sit and watch those pumps. And when those levees broke back in 93, it just sounded like dynamite going off, and the devastation was unreal. I know Ronnie had redone a house down there in the bottoms, and when it was finally safe to go see devastation, he got into a boat and was able to get into the second story window because the first floor was just water. So all of that happened, 20 years ago.
Did you have floods like that when you were a child in Missouri?
Going back to when I was much younger, we would have like Crooked River would get out, Fishing River would get out, but nothing like that flood of 1993. Because in Des Moines, didn't Des Moines have drinking water issues during that flood? If I remember, Ed Wilson on Channel 13 was on TV for how many hours straight. But I don't remember anything that devastating. I remember that Grandma Mary June had a sister, Aunt Ruth. Aunt Ruth and Uncle Dave just lived about 4 miles east of us. And there was one summer, I think that we spent half the summer in their root cellar because they were elderly. And every time a tornado watch would come out, they'd come over and say, "You all need to come and sit in the cellar with us." I think there was one summer we spent half the evening sitting in their root cellar. But then again, they were thinking about, there was the Ruskin tornado that went through South Kansas City. And where I grew up was about, to give you an idea, to drive from home down to the old American Royal Building, it was about 65, 70 miles. This Ruskin tornado, I can't tell where it generated, but it came up through South Kansas City, came kind of along the river. It destroyed the school at Orick, which sits on the river in Ray County, Missouri. And after all that went through and people were out there picking up all the devastation, they were finding canceled checks and mail from people in Kansas City, Missouri. And that's how devastating that tornado was. So I don't know if that's what Uncle Dave and Aunt Ruth were talking about. But talking about Uncle Dave and Aunt Ruth, this is the anniversary of the man walking on the moon. And I just read that in the paper waiting to come on. And the interesting thing about that was Uncle Dave and Aunt Ruth came over. We had just gotten up from the supper table. And of course, they had that on all national news. Got to be about 9:30, time for them to leave. And Uncle Dave stood out in the front yard at home and looked up at the moon and said, "I never, ever thought I would live to see the day where somebody walked on the moon up there."
Yes.
And I thought of that when I read that in the paper. So Uncle Dave and Aunt Ruth, they were something else. Aunt Ruth would tell the story about they would butcher a chicken for the lunch for everybody to have for their lunch. And she was known for being able to pick up a black snake and pop his head off with just one crack. And never had any children. So they, adopted all of us, but just funny stuff like that. Oh my God.
Hey, Sherry, I want to switch back to 4-H. When you were in 4-H, certainly influenced by your parents and leaders and community. But I believe your mom taught you how to sew.
Oh my God. Well, she tried.
Can you share a blooper with us about your sewing experience?
Janine, my mother was so mad at me. So anyway, back in the day, I was Dad's right-hand man. Now, I love to knit, I love to crochet, but sewing is not my thing. So anyway, we get up, it was before the county fair, and that was when all the girls were wearing these smock tops, if you remember the smock tops. So nothing doing, but Sherry's going to make the smock top and we're going to take it to the Ray County Fair. So anyway, we get up from the supper table and gooseberries were ripe. And Grandpa Donald on the paternal side loved gooseberry pie. So Mother gets up and she very sternly looks at me and she said, I'm going to go over there on the other side of the fescue and I'm going to pick some gooseberries. And you don't come over there until you have those side seams stitched and pinked. Because remember, we had to take the pinking shears, you know?
Yes.
So, of course, I don't want to do it, you know. So I sit down and I whip together these two side seams. And I thought, well, she told me I had to take the pinking shears. So I take the pinking shears. And I pick up this smock top. And I thought, that kind of feels thick. And I went lock, and I went, probably shouldn't have done that. And I opened it up, and there were holes on either side. Whoa. So then I had to go fess up to Mom that I had screwed up. Therefore, that is the last garment that I was ever forced to put together. Forced. Well, in fact, I just tried to make something here about a month ago, and I ended up throwing away the material, the pattern, and everything. I just can't do it. Now, I can stitch a straight line for like a quilt, but no, I'm not. I'm done with all of that. She was mad. Yeah, she was pretty mad. But she could do beautiful. She would do, that's back. Well, I know you always did make it with wool, but, you know, dress review back in the 50s was a big deal. And I just remember her talking about doing all of that because Mom wore a size 6 quad. So she has really narrow feet. So she would make her outfit for dress review. And there was a shoe store down in Slater where she could go and get those shoes that fit her little narrow feet. And that was always a big deal. Big deal.
Yes. Well, those experiences certainly taught you what you did want to do and what you didn't want to continue doing.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Well, you know, Roger's an excellent cook. You know, if it wasn't for him, I'd starve. So, in fact, when he is gone, I go to Dollar General in town and get a can of SpaghettiOs and call it good. But now to bake, baking is another deal. I enjoy baking. You know, it's county fair season. I remember specifically for county fair, and of course the goal is to get to go to state fair. I was going to make this braided apricot ring, and it did go to state. But my gosh, you know, Mother would make us roll out of bed like at 1:30 or 2 in the morning, and you had to get the yeast up to rising, and then it had to be perfect. And, you know, even canning. Now, when we were home in Missouri, we had a fairly good sized garden, and I would can. First attempt at canning on my own. Mother wouldn't let me do it by myself. I had to take everything 2 miles down to her place, her and Dad's place, because she just knew Roger and I were going to be dead in the middle of winter because I didn't let a can seal. But canning, and I know Jenny was talking about canning dilly beans Thursday night. And do you girls remember that when you put together your can, your lid, if it said Kerr, had to be in line with the emblem on the jar, and it had to be exactly in alignment. And you had to get your green beans in there just right because it's all in presentation. And yes, I remember doing all that. Well, then again, that's why I don't do so much of it now.
Jackie, can you help conclude our fun chat with one more question, please?
With one more question. Well, you and Roger have obviously some very busy lives. Have you ever taken a vacation? I mean, besides going to cattle sales?
No, Jackie, I don't think we didn't even go on a honeymoon. We got married. Roger moved me out of the apartment in Omaha on a Friday afternoon. We got married on a Saturday afternoon at 2. Sunday we got up, went to church, and Monday we went to work.
Okay.
So, no, I can't think of any time right now that we've ever just been touristy stuff. Nope, never. And probably never will, because that we just don't really enjoy it. We like going to sales and shows and seeing our people. We just love that atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are kind of like mini vacations, though.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, many vacations.
Different atmosphere.
Viewers, we are so glad that you've had the opportunity to meet Dr. Sherry Olsen, who now lives in Story City, Iowa. And she has told wonderful memories of being influenced by someone who lived in the 1950s and 1960s. And my, what an influential time that was for our generation and even as the generations continue. So we thank you, Sherry, for being our guest.
Thank you very much. This has been fun.
Good.
So people on the other side of the screen there, we would like to request that you take a color test here. Look for the red button that says subscribe and look for the blue that says a thumbs up. Just touch those two and you'll be doing what we hope you will be doing. So until next time, tell your friends and your relatives even about the 1950s Fun Chat. So until then, toodaloo.